again. How do I get rid of that picture? Got you.
You want to get rid of it?
Yeah, just.
Jesse, good evening.
Hello.
Always right on time.
I'm
Appreciate
I'm part German, so it's like
that.
I think it's a
That's
German
a good thing. So we're gonna wait a couple of seconds and see a couple of moments, see who else logs in, and I am putting those old classes online tonight.
Okay, I appreciate
and what I'm gonna do at the end of this session, I am going to let you all know how to get to those classes, and basically it's gonna be a password. Let me see, I'm making it up now. I think what I'm gonna do through my website, there will be a certain area for what I'm gonna call the Pro Club, P-R-O. I mean, it could stand for probation, but that's not what I'm using it for. I'm using it for power, restoration, and opportunities. So that's our Pro Club. And when you go to that link, it's gonna be a password, and I'm gonna set this up. It's not set up right now. It's gonna be Pro Club 2020. And
Okay.
once you click there, you'll be able to go in and access all the material that I have. That material will be not only the videos that we have, it'll be some worksheets and things like that, and that's a place where you can pull down some of the homework questions. If I give you homework assignments and you forget what they were, I'll have them there also. So that's gonna be our link when we get together on that Pro Club on judgedawson.com. So what I'm gonna do, because we are recording these videos and I'm gonna be uploading them, I'm gonna go ahead and just start with the three of us, and hopefully everybody who tuned in last week will come back on this week. And keep in mind, when I do these programs, again, I appreciate you all logging in, and some people are really utilizing what we have here by getting rid of the classes, getting the classes done. Others are not, so it's really odd because this is the easiest way to go through it. I mean, it's only a 30-minute class that we do here, and not only that, it's really straight to the point. So it's a great opportunity to get your probation requirements done. And then even after that, if you're not doing it and you're supposed to be doing it, you know, you can be violated. So it's kind of odd to me, those who miss these opportunities. So I appreciate you all tuning in. So let me go ahead and get started.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Oh, so this I think is my 8th one. I did one in person, and then the whole pandemic hit, and so this will be my 7th online. So if I missed 3 of them in the past, I don't know how many I've missed, like how far back you started before I joined in. But if I miss 3, then that would mean that, and I do them within this next week, so that would mean next week would be my last, because we need 12 of these, correct?
You need 12 separate classes. So like for instance, if you attended today, you couldn't do a replay of today, right?
No.
Right, but there's some other ones that you missed. Absolutely, you can make up those 3 that you've missed by going to the replays and doing the work that's attached to it.
Okay, I don't know if I missed 3 or not. I don't know how many, but I'm just saying if there were 3, then next week would be my final class then.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And what you'd want to do is contact your probation officer just to let them know that you're done with that portion of it. That way they can tell you what's going forward.
Okay.
Cool?
Okay.
All right. So let me go ahead and get to my screen share, because that is the way that I'm going to go through this presentation like we've done the other ones. Let me see. To the desktop. Let me see. Let me see what's going on here. Give me 1 second with the screen share, make sure it's coming on. All right, there we go. Catching all that, all right. You can see the screen, correct, Jesse?
Yes. Yeah,
All
I
right.
can see.
So here we are. What we've been doing is going through the Cycle Breaker book, and this is chapter 3, The Night of No Return, which is interesting because it kind of plays into what we're dealing with right now in America with the protesting and the rioting that's going on. So before we go into the chapter, what we are seeing throughout our country is evenings of
You froze. I don't know if you can hear me.
You froze.
I don't think he can hear us. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, he's coming back on.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, he's back.
Okay.
You're muted now. Judge Dawson, you're muted.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I can tell when something happens. So I'll always come right back. And what's funny is most times I can hear you all, like, what's going on, what's going on. So I appreciate that. Hey, so don't say anything crazy when it goes dark. Because I remember one time it went dark and Jesse, it was you and the other young man. And I forget, it wasn't nothing bad, but he said something to the effect of, I don't know, almost like it's a good thing if it goes off that way, the class is over. It was something kind of crazy, but nothing bad. I can understand that. So when it goes blank,
that wasn't me that said it.
No, that wasn't you. I could tell the voices at that time. All right, so let me shoot back into this screenshot so we can get through this. And again, this is not a lot of material today. I do have the homework that we normally have, but it's some things I want us to think about. All right, so we're talking about the Night of No Return in the Cycle Breaker book. It's chapter 3. That correlates to what we've been dealing with in this country. Every single night for the last few days, it has really turned into chaos. And I don't want to necessarily say it's a night of no return, but the bottom line is the energy that exists in the morning with the protests that are sometimes peaceful turns different in the evening. It turns into violence, it turns into looting, it turns into burning things down. And it's a stark difference between those two. And I will mention this, there's something I'm gonna put on our website through our pro program. It's actually on the first page of my website too. It's a message about real solutions to this issue. So that's something you may want to take a look at. At some point, I may address that during our class and maybe even create some homework out of that. But the bottom line is everyone is frustrated. Everyone's frustrated about Mr. Floyd's death. Everyone's frustrated about the way it happened. And we understand, I understand that protesting is a part of change in this country. Because if you think about it, the prosecutions, or at least the arrest with the Mr. Arbery down in Georgia, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for social media. And maybe even the knee in George Floyd's neck, maybe that would not have become a issue that we're dealing with had it not been for video recording, social media, and then the outrage that we had. So there is definitely a space, a need, and a time for protesting. Now contrast that to some of the violence that's going on. And this is where a lot of people split, because a lot of people believe that the violence, the looting, the burning things down is just as important a part of protesting and change as the peaceful protesting. I do not believe that, but some people do. In my opinion, you know, all my years of living, I believe that basically the way that we affect change is to speak up, demand change, but then we have to work with the system to get it. When there's this violence that's going on in our community right now, it changes the narrative. So for instance, as opposed to President Trump having to address the wrongs that were committed, now what we have him doing is tweeting about being aggressive with looters and being aggressive with those who are protesting violently in the street. So we don't have a president who must speak to peace because we've given him a reason to speak to the other stuff. So my point is, even though there's frustration, we have to understand at some point we have to stop that violence. We have to stop looting, breaking into businesses and burning things down, because that's not going to bring about the change that we're asking for. Because in this situation, it needs to be serious policy changes, and the change may be different for every different community. So if there's a situation in East Cleveland with police officers, right? What we need to change in East Cleveland could be totally different from what they need to change in New York. You know, from what we need to change in the city of Cleveland could be different from Chicago. So it's not necessarily that we need these gigantic, broad-based policy changes. What we need is to have our local government, the prosecutors on the local level, the council people on the local level, the mayor. We need all those individuals, the judge, to get involved with making sure that your individual community is safe. And that's the way that we're going to affect change. And we do that by appealing to their sensibilities, by saying, look, we're going to protest. We're going to, we're not going to shop here. We're going to boycott, all those things. And one of the other things I want to mention before we continue on is that the process of change, real change in this country, it takes time. And what I mean by that is, it's not going to happen overnight or over the weekend based on all these protests. It takes dedicated time and effort to this cause beyond this weekend, even beyond this month. Did a little bit of research on Martin Luther King and the boycott, the bus boycott that they participated in. That was over a year. It was almost 380 something days that they went without riding a bus, because they wanted to show Montgomery how they would break down their economic structure if they didn't participate in that public bus riding and spend the money. It took that long, but change occurred. So when we go out and think that by busting a few windows and breaking in stores that have nothing to do with it, small businesses, that's not the way that we're going to get change. And I'm just not one that, that succumbs to that type of frustration. Now, I'm different. I understand that some people are very, very frustrated, but again, we have to be strategic about what we're doing and burning pay the deductible to get the window fit. Shoot, some of them may not even have insurance to get the window fit. I saw a bail who works in community, and some guys jumped in the car, busted the windows, took a bat to the car. And I'm thinking, man, I know this woman. And not only that, she's a bail bondsman. She helps get people out of jail when they're in trouble. But there was no regard for that. It was all about proving this frustration in the most violent and destructive way. So chapter 3 of the cycle breaker, we talk about night no return. And in this chapter, basically, even though it's not talking about rioting, what we're talking about in this chapter is making decisions that have lasting effects that may be hard to come back from. So when we think about looting, we think about all the burning, those have lasting effects that may be hard to come back from. When you're busting up and breaking down small businesses or businesses in general, they may not come back to that community. They may not be able to rebuild. Or if you make the mistake by being involved in that, you may not be able to come back from that situation. Another thing I want to mention, if you are on Instagram or any of those social medias, I just saw something on Sam Silk. Sam Silk is a radio host here in Cleveland. If you go to his page, he put up a video of an African-American woman being arrested by some police. Now, the scene is one African-American woman, 2 Caucasian officers, and an African-American officer. The Caucasian officer grabs the woman and she slaps him with her right hand. And I mean, literally slapped his face. Says something to the officer and then slaps him with her left hand, right in the face. Now, she two-pieced him basically, right? But what's interesting is the officer behind her hit her from behind in her face and knocked her to the ground. Interesting scenario. I'm not even giving you my opinion on it, but she slapped a white officer twice. And then the officer that hit her was a black officer. So the questions to consider: was that officer correct in striking her after she hit the white officer 2 times? That's one question. The second question: should she be charged with the felony charge of assault on a police officer? And that's what we're talking about, the night of no return. Sometimes you do these things not even thinking about the possibility. That's not just a misdemeanor. That's not just a slap on the wrist. She could get felony assault charges on a police officer that carries mandatory jail time if they decide to prosecute like that. And then the third thing to consider is the officer that she hit, the white officer, didn't strike back at all. And maybe it was because the black officer was there, I don't know. But check that out. If you get a chance, go to Sam Silk's Instagram page. I haven't yet developed my opinion on it, but I really thought it was shocking when I saw it. But that's another example of what we're talking about tonight. The night of no return, when you do things that is hard to come back from. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's move through some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Again, I'm not going to hold you long. I just want to be effective and efficient. So what I want us to do, part of our research or our work after the project, is discuss the difference between protests at night versus the protests during the day. Because we know that there's a difference. And then also, are these points of no return? So what I mean by that is, if you're protesting during the day, if there's a peaceful protest going on, does that turn to something that where you can't return from? I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't. Normally, a peaceful protest is something you go to, you make your voice be heard, you stand your ground, you stay there as long as you need to. That may get the point across. But some of those things that are happening at night are leaving a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So we got to be careful about that. Now, I also want to mention this. There are some protests that are going on at the White House. I don't know if you've noticed that, or they're trying to get close to the White House. That's a different situation. Is it important at the White House to show them how angry you are? Is it important to burn things up in that regard, or should you stay there with a peaceful protest? I'm not judging any of the movements. I'm just saying those are things that we have to think about before we find ourselves in situations that we can't return from. All right, so let me continue with this presentation so we can roll. All right, so this is from the book, and I'm just going to paraphrase. We're talking about chapter 3, and we're talking about these young men who gather to kind of chill at their friend's house. They're not working, they're not doing anything. So at night, they would walk the neighborhood. Yes, they can either, consider just chilling out or stalking, whatever you want to call it, maybe looking for something to do. But basically what they did at this point was they went up to a man who was in the neighborhood. One of the guys said, "You know what it is," and Russie lifted up his shirt to get his gun. Now here's the interesting part. As soon as they pulled for the gun, the man who they were trying to rob had his own gun. How easy is that to happen in our community right now? I'm gonna tell you, it's very easy, because everybody that comes in my court, and I use the word everybody loosely, but everybody's packing, everybody has a gun. So that to me is making the community a little bit more unsafe, because if somebody comes to rob you and they're just gonna take your things, that's one thing. But when it becomes a shootout on the street, that's dangerous not only for you, but for any bystander. So that's my personal take. But in this situation, the guy that they were trying to rob pulled out his own gun and shot Russie, shot the aggressor. First thing he said was, "Damn, man, why'd you make me do that?" So here's the key. At that point, somebody has entered an area of no return. First of all, obviously, when you use a weapon to rob somebody, you are committing a felony. That felony comes with mandatory jail time. And in Cuyahoga County, where we are, you have a gun specification attached to it. That could be 1 year mandatory jail time, or it could be 3 years mandatory jail time. So not only is it, I'm gonna carry a gun for my safety, carrying that gun now adds on the potential jail time. So we have to really think about it, if it's worth it. And then the fact that everybody else is packing, that creates another scenario. So what's the difference between the shooter that was in our book, Russie, that's the young man's name, and the shooting, or not the shooting actually, the killing, that's what I meant to have there, the killing of George Floyd. So obviously you know what the difference is, and this is not even your question, this is something I want to talk about. The difference is George Floyd was murdered because the officer who put his knee in his neck had no regard for his life. Now, the interesting thing that we can take away from this, there was a big debate on television today about the charges that the officer has against him. They are charging him with third-degree murder, but you know they have the option of doing first degree, second degree, or third degree. First degree murder in many states is an element that has an element of premeditated murder. Premeditated murder means the person thought about it, planned it, and then carried out the murder. Premeditated murder in a lot of cases carries the sentence of life in prison or maybe even the death penalty. So when people are looking at George Floyd, the first thing they're thinking is this officer had no regard for his life. He needs to be in prison for the rest of his life or he needs the death penalty. But here's the problem with that. It's a premeditated murder element. So are they able, would the prosecutors be able to prove premeditated murder when the officer put his knee in his neck? And you know, whether you remember or not, I practiced defense law for 10 years before becoming a judge, and it would be hard, if not impossible, to prove premeditated murder in this situation. Because what they have to show is that he planned out this situation, he set the stage for it, and then he followed through with it. From all evidence that we have, this was a police call about a bad check, something happened, they end up trying to restrain him, and then the murder or the death occurred. So premeditated, you want to throw it out the window, because if you charge him with premeditated murder, trying to get a home run, you probably will lose the entire case. Then you step to second degree, which is basically, I didn't necessarily plan it, but what I did caused the death. And then you have third degree, which oftentimes is reckless homicide. That means you were doing something in such a reckless manner that you killed somebody. So the third degree, I think, carries only about 12 years in prison. Second degree is about a maximum of 25 years. And then, like I said, first degree could be life. Everybody wants the higher sentence. But the problem is, if you go for that, you may not be able to get a conviction at all. But the flip side of that debate is, should the officer be charged with second degree or third degree? Right now, he's charged with third degree. Third degree would only cause him to spend approximately, give or take 12 years or so. And everybody believes that are angry that that's not enough. And maybe it's not. And maybe they can prove more than just him being reckless. Maybe they can prove that it was a manslaughter situation. So those are generally the differences between all of those particular cases. Those are the differences between what happened in our book. What happened in our book was Russie went to rob somebody and he got shot. Something else you should know about that, because in our book, The Cycle Breaker, Russie wasn't by himself. He was with a bunch of friends. Would all of his friends be charged with any offense? Now think about this. Russie is the offender, and he got all his boys here, right? That's this hand. And then you got this one guy who they were gonna rob. The one guy that they were gonna rob shoots Russie. So he don't get shot. Russie gets shot. Do you think his friends will be charged with any crime? What do you think by a show of hands? Yes or no? Jesse, what you think? You all say yes. A couple of yeses, maybe no's. Here's the key. In Ohio, they definitely would be charged. It's called the felony murder or felony attempted murder rule. Basically what happens is when the four of them decided to commit this felony together, it doesn't matter if anybody gets hurt while committing that crime, they're all gonna be charged with that attempted murder or murder charge. That's another reason we have to be careful about who we're hanging with and who we spend our time with, because if somebody does something crazy while they're with you, it's a good chance you may be charged. All right, so let me move on. All right, so last part from our book, and I think I'm getting close to our questions. That's what happened when you have no vision for your future. This is important. If you don't have a vision for your future, your days run into weeks, your weeks run into years, and before you know it, you are living the same day over and over again without any progress, or without making any significant contribution to the world. So what do I mean by that? It's plain and simple, but I'll restate it. If you don't have a goal or a vision for where you want to go, not only, like we said before in our previous sessions, not only can you fall for anything and fall for the traps of breaking the law and getting caught up in this cycle called the legal system, but you simply start living the same day over and over again. You get up in the morning, and I'm just being general. Get up in the morning, smoke some weed, play some video games, maybe go to a part-time job, kick it with your friends, go to sleep. Next day, get up in the morning, smoke some weed, play some video games, go to your part-time job if you have a job, kick it with your friends, and whatever the case may be. My point is, if you don't have a vision saying, you know what, in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, this is what I want to accomplish, you will end up living that same day over and over again for 50, 60 years and won't go anywhere. Today in court, I had a young man who was charged with, gosh, let me remember. It was a felony charge, and I think it may have been a breaking and entering. He was 19 years old. This was today. So I said to him, you know, they read the charges. The police officer, the detective, asked me to set a $25,000 bond, and then the defense attorney was asking me to reduce it to $10,000. So of course I can make that decision, right? So I'm talking to the young man. The police officer says, look, Judge, he's been arrested 4 other times for breaking and entering, some drug offenses. We feel he's a threat to the community. The defense attorney gets up and says, yeah, Judge, but he's 19. He's a young man. He could turn his life around. So I asked him, I said, young man, what do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years? And this was just today, which is crazy. And he said, I just want to get this case behind me. I'm going to try to get this case over with. And I'm thinking to myself, that is a problem, because that is a very short-sighted answer. So I repeated myself. I said, look, all right, the case will be over in a year at the most. You'll be, you know, even if you get jail time, they're charging you with a felony 5. That's, 12 months in prison. It'll be over. What do you want to do in the next 5 years of your life? And he didn't have an answer at all. At 19 years old, he didn't even have a vision for what he wanted to do. His only vision, all he could see was trying to get past this one case. And that's an example of living the same life over and over and over, living the same day over and over and over, which may be the reason why he keeps getting all these breaking and entering charges, because he gets up in the morning and he's just doing the same thing. So for us, we have to develop a vision that's beyond where we are right now so that we can extend and be productive and make sure that we don't fall into this trap called the legal system, because it is a trap. All right. So last part of the book that we're going to talk about, and I'll just read this to you. This is important because it basically talks about the difference between vision and sight. When you operate by sight, you are only concerned with your current situation, your current desire, like that guy in my court today. All he wanted to think about was getting past his case. In other words, you only care about the things that are right in front of you right now. And oftentimes you will jeopardize your future because you are focused on your present desires, needs, obstacles, and even distractions. The opposite of operating by sight is to operate by vision. Vision, that's when you can see far in the distance. And maybe the things don't seem immediate and that you can get them right now, but you're focusing on your goals, on your plans. So what we have to do to be successful is that you have to have a vision. At some point, you have to figure out, what do you want to do in the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years of your life? And you have to be able to see past your current situation. And that's where it's hard. If you are living in a situation where you're not happy, it's hard to see past it. If you're living in a home where there's domestic violence, it's hard to see past it. When you go to work and you know you're coming home and you don't want to be there, or it's violence in the house, or you don't get along with the people that live there, it's hard to look past that. There's no doubt about it. But you have to if you care about your future. Because getting caught up in right now, everything that's right in front of you, everything that's within your sight is jeopardizing what can be in your vision long term. And that's how we get to nights of no return. That's how we get to throwing things through the window and going in and looting, knowing that there are cameras. So a lot of those people will be caught, but they're not thinking about it because all they see is what's in front of them and they're not looking at their vision. All right, so after class assignment. First thing I want to go back to saying this. For those who have tuned in later on tonight, so maybe by tomorrow, you go to the website, judgedawson.com. There's going to be a section for pro. Pro is, it could mean probation, as I said earlier, but I have it meaning power, restoration, and opportunity. So the pro club, that's what we are, the pro club. And in that area is going to be the videos. There are going to be links to the videos so that you can see all the past classes. Some of the homework assignments will be there. So that'll be our area, but you'll access it by judgedawson.com. The password that I'm going to put in effect when I put this up will be Pro Club 2020. So that's how you'll get into the section. All right, the homework or the after class work, this is the way that you prove that you were in this class, and you email it to me at judgewilliamdawson@gmail.com. Number 1, describe your feelings about the George Floyd murder and the protests after. What are your feelings about what's going on in America right now? Describe it for me. Number 2, do protests work, in your opinion? What are the benefits of a protest? That's question number 3. Number 4, what does looting have to do with protesting? And maybe you can explain that to me, or you can tell me how it doesn't have anything to do with each other. It all depends. I just want to know what you think. Does looting work? Some of you may disagree with some of the things I said earlier, which is fine. Let's just talk about it. Tell me if you believe that looting works. And number 6 is, what change would you like to see? Meaning, what would you like to see done to stop what happened this past week? Whether it's the murder of George Floyd or the protesting or the looting, just if you could control those scenarios, what change needs to be put in place? So those are the assignments that we have for this particular class. Let me get on out of here. Let me see. Are there any questions from our wonderful group who's been so dedicated in listening this afternoon or this evening? Any questions at all? Let me make sure everybody's unmuted. So if you had any questions, you can ask. If you don't, again, all you have to do is go to the website.
Is the password just all lowercase?
All lowercase, Pro Club 2020.
Okay.
And that will have all the links, some other information, just good things that you can take a look at. Nothing but trying to be positive, nothing but trying to move us all in the right direction.
Will dates be attached to those?
Yep, they'll be organized by date. And that's a good question, because they may not be organized by topic, but they will be organized by date for the videos. Okay. That way you'll know which classes you missed. And that's even a better way to do it, because we often know what classes we missed versus what I was talking about. All right. Any questions at all? Any thoughts? Any concerns? If not, I will see
email.
Email address, all spelled out, Judge William Dawson @gmail.com. Judge William Dawson @gmail.com. On the website, judgedawson.com. Pro Club will be the button. It'll be there by tomorrow. And the password is Pro Club 2020. That way you can find all the resources from our discussions. All right? All right, everyone, have a good weekend or a good week. Be safe. Take care.
Bye. You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.